Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So, day 4 of spoiler season has already been off to an exciting start. I mean, this morning we got a brand new card that is 15 mana. Yeah, that's one of the most expensive cards of all time. I mean, converted mana cost wise, mana value wise, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, so to see what this spicy card does and what kind of decks want it, well, jump into that episode at some point to find out. But not before you watch this episode. And yeah, for the title of this episode, I literally just had to put down my exact thoughts of what I would be thinking or saying the second that I put down this card, which would be, yeah, okay, evil villain laugh. Regardless, make sure you blame Eddie for that, and blame Eddie for any other mistakes that I make on this episode, and with that said, let's jump into it. First off, a big thank you to MTG Goldfish for the translated version of this card. Angel of Anguish is a 5/3 Nightmare Angel because that's a thing with flying that costs 3 black. It says, if you would be dealt damage, prevent that damage and mill twice that many cards instead. So first off, obviously a 5/3 flyer for 5 mana, not bad at all. But obviously that's not the MWAHAHAHAHA part of this card. Okay, I'll stop that. That's not the spicy part of this card. The spicy part is, well, preventing damage dealt to you and milling twice as many cards is a very crazy thing. Essentially, with this in play, as long as you've got a giant library or you actually want to get milled, and we'll get into decks that definitely want to get milled and would love this card, you can just go shields down for a lot of the game. You can just be like, all right, yep, swing through, deal some damage to me, great, I actually want you to hit me so I can mill cards. I mean, there might even be circumstances or, card combinations where you actually want to deal damage to yourself with your own effects, just to mill a ton of cards to get, some major benefits from that. So, in a way, this is kind of like a Platinum Angel-ish. Platinum Angel is basically like, hey, you can't lose the game. This is kind of like, hey, you don't lose the game for being dealt damage, at least while I'm in play. You lose the game, if you lose your entire library, and then you try to draw. But again, obviously in some decks as well, that's actually a good thing. Or of course, there are ways to, prevent yourself from milling, by shuffling your graveyard back into your library. There are obviously a lot of implications with this card and some pretty crazy things that you can do with it. And yeah, like I mentioned, there are some commanders that are absolutely going to love this card and would love to just start milling a ton of cards whenever they're dealt damage. Being able to swing the axis of, hey, okay, I don't really care about losing life anymore. I don't care what my life total is all that much. All I really care about is how many cards are left in my library. Can lead to some very interesting plays. I mean, to this point, we really haven't seen too many cards that are really all that similar to this kind of effect. I mean, the first ones that came to my mind were cards like Delaying Shield, Nefarious Lich, and Crumbling Sanctuary, and these are quite old. I mean, we haven't seen cards like this one in quite some time. Now for all these, again, because they are quite old, I'm going to read the Oracle text on them, so here we go. Delaying Shield says, if damage be dealt to you, put that many delay counters on Delaying Shield instead. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove all delay counters from Delaying Shield. For each delay counter moved this way, you lose 1 life unless you pay 1 and a white. So with this one, you're not really being dealt the damage right away. It's delaying, obviously, the name and the counters, but and there are ways to work around that by giving it away, but it's not, changing that damage into something else like milling like this new card. Now, Lich is kind of the opposite of our new Angel. Nefarious Lich says, if damage be dealt to you, exile that many cards from your graveyard instead. If you can't, you lose the game. So instead of actually milling us when we're dealt damage, we get rid of those cards in our graveyard, and actually, in combination, these two could work pretty interestingly. Regardless, the card that this is probably most like is Crumbling Sanctuary, which says if damage will be dealt to a player, that player exiles that many cards to the top of their library instead. So obviously there's some key differences between this and our new Angel. This one affects all players, not just ourselves, so we really don't always want to, protect our opponents, for the most part. So preventing damage to them, not great. And also, exiling the cards is a huge difference versus milling in that, well, in a lot of decks out there, self-milling, you actually, you want to mill yourself, you want cards in your graveyard. Exiling them, not so much. Those cards are just going to be gone permanently then, and you can't access them again. And yeah, just milling, vastly superior to exiling in the vast majority of circumstances when it comes to your own things. Now, that being said, obviously, milling yourself in some scenarios, is actually a really good thing with things like Lab Maniac, Jace Builder Mysteries, Thess Oracle. You win the game cards if you don't have a library, essentially. Or I should say, if you have no cards in your library and you try to draw a card, then you win the game. But yeah, I don't see this Angel, as a combination card with these being like the main way that you're going to try to win with it. That's kind of a lot of workarounds, and obviously, if you are playing with these cards, there are ways to, combo with and mill yourself or, get rid of your library much quicker than that. I mean, Demonic Consultation, if you're playing in a very competitive meta. Anyways. There are actually a good amount of commanders out there that can really benefit from this card, and the first one that came to my mind was Sir Conrad the Grim. Sir Conrad says, whenever another creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. This is actually quite funny because, if your opponents actually try to hit you and deal damage to you, again, when you've got that Angel in play, instead, you mill, twice as much essentially as the amount of damage that's dealt to you, and then from that milling, creatures start hitting your graveyard, and again, Sir Conrad cares about creatures hitting your graveyard essentially from anywhere. Whenever a creature card is put in your graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, that includes your library, it's going to start pinging each of your opponents for 1, for every single one of those creatures you mill. So yeah, attacking you or trying to deal damage to you in any way is a very, 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 let's just say awkward situation, difficult situation for all of your opponents when you've got that Angel out. Speaking of which, another commander that's going to want to consider this brand new Angel is Sidisi Brood Tyrant. Sidisi has, when it enters the battlefield or attacks, mill 3, and then whenever 1 or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from your library, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. Now, keep in mind, this does say 1 or more, so say someone hits you for 5 damage, you'd mill 10, right? And if you hit multiple creatures in there, that doesn't really matter. All that matters is you hit 1 creature at least, so you're going to get 1 zombie. Even if you hit multiple creatures, you still just get 1 out of that. Now, that being said, if they hit you with multiple creatures, that's multiple sources of damage and multiple triggers, so then you're going to get more zombies with the more creatures that you hit from those different piles of mill. Piles of mill. Definitely a phrase. Everyone's saying it. Anyways. Speaking of which, a commander that works in a somewhat similar way with that 1 or more trigger, we've got Sephirus of the Hidden Ways. Sephirus has, whenever 1 or more creature cards are put in your graveyard from anywhere, venture into the dungeon. This ability triggers only once each turn. And then whenever you complete a dungeon, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this one does have an even further limitation with this ability triggers only once each turn, which is some text that I absolutely dislike. But yeah, Wizards is starting to use it more and more often. Bad Wizards. Bad. Regardless, this new Angel can definitely still see play with a commander like Sephirus in a self-mill strategy where you want to get a lot of cards in your graveyard. And again, if your opponents are dealing damage to you on each of their turns, you're going to get at least 1 trigger as long as you hit a creature when you're milling cards. Moving on, speaking of a commander that definitely wants a ton of creatures in the graveyard, well, there's Arami of the Dead Tide. Arami has tap exile cards from your graveyard equal to the number of opponents you have. Target creature card in your graveyard gains Encore until end of turn. The Encore cost is equal to its mana cost. So again, the new Angel can get you a ton of creatures into your graveyard. Again, just getting hit a couple of times is going to mill yourself for a lot, giving you a lot of fuel for this commander. Again, you have to exile, 3 cards if you've got 3 opponents, essentially. But yeah, you also have a ton of options then for creatures to Encore out, and there's some really powerful things that you can do with this. Of course, another commander that loves having a massive graveyard, though, is Muldrotha the Gravetide, which says during each of your turns you may play up to 1 permanent card of each permanent type from your graveyard. So the more and more cards you have access to in your graveyard, well, it's kind of like just having a separate hand, a second hand where you can cast, again, 1 of each permanent card, essentially, or should I say, play, because you can also do lands as well, So yeah, having this Angel in play that prevents damage to you can either deter attacks, which is great, or if your opponents are going to attack you, it just gives you more and more cards to have access to with your commander. And one final commander that I want to bring up that could utilize this Angel in a very effective way is Lazav the Multifarious. Lazav has, when it enters the battlefield, Surveil 1, and by paying X, Lazav becomes a copy of target creature card in your graveyard with converted mana cost X, except its name is Lazav, it's legendary and distributes other types, and it has this ability. Basically, Lazav can become a copy of a creature in your graveyard, and you can just kind of, switch that out whenever you need to, or whenever you want to, or whenever you have the mana for it. So you can even make Lazav a copy of your Angel if it's in your graveyard. If someone, say, is swinging at you for a ton, and you're like, you know what, I'd rather just get cards in my graveyard. Awesome. I will make Lazav into a copy of that. My opponent hits me for that much damage, I mill a ton of cards. Great, I get access to even more cards for my commander. And then let's say your library is getting low at some point. Well, maybe, instead of having, Lazav as your Angel, just swap it out for another creature before that damage is dealt. So just take the damage instead of taking the mill. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Angel of Anguish. Yeah, this Nightmare Angel is quite spicy, and I can see some decks out there really making good use of it. Again, there are certain decks out there that are going to be like, great, mill me for a ton. I would absolutely love if you hit me for a ton of damage and I got a ton of cards into my graveyard. Again, there are certain commanders out there, like Sir Conrad or Sidisi, that are going to be like, sweet, I get to dish out damage or make more zombies. So yeah, this can just be either a great attack deterrent or one that you can actually benefit from your opponents actually hitting you or dealing damage to you in other ways. Overall, yeah, a very spicy card that's going to have a lot of players saying, MWAHAHAHAHA! Okay, terrible evil laugh aside, yeah, there are even more spicy cards in this set, so make sure you check out my other episodes if you haven't seen them so far, other quick takes, and yes, there are going to be even more exciting cards coming up, so make sure and look out for even more quick takes in the future. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.